Hi. I'm Frenxotic, the clown. We're not starting right now. It's still a bit early. We're starting in 5 minutes. I made a sign. See? See? I made this. Let's listen to some music. Like the Jimmy Shandy Band and Ambush Finn and Matt Tyler. Enjoy.
She knew I was undead when I hit the dough, so she dropped low. Damn, you don't know. I mean, I wanna drop some dough. She kept climbing the pole, she been down the road. No supernatural, meaning dangerous. She keep doing this, put some pain in this lovely neck. It's dripping wet, no bedroom eyes, that skin affected me. Anyway, you don't understand. I got the strength of a dozen man. You can't resist, I'm tantalizing, hypnotizing, darkness rising, anticipation, mental surmising, energized pains, out of hiding. I'm trying not to, but you want to feel the darkness, maybe bite you. I wanna bite you, 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 bite you. Don't try to fight it, you will find it. Now you feel your veins being cauterized. All your senses are being heightened. Bright lights hurt, you get you frightened. You feel the hunger that's taking over. Your life is over, supernova. Wave of darkness, your body shaking. The covenant's feel, your soul is taken. You awaken, invincible. Thinking this ain't real and sensible. At the same time, feeling reprehensible. Even though you undead, it's the principle. You are visible in the middle of the night. They can put up a fight like we in twilight. Silver don't stop you, use your sight. Just use your life if you are tonight. I wanna fight you, fight you. 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 Grab you, put you in bondage. As an M, now you my hostage. Dressed in leather, stiletto heels with a fishnets on, everything's revealed. Sadomasochism, handcuffed to the rhythm. Gyrating, orgasm on a platform as you perform. Let me bite your wrist, make you transform. Watch you die, then resurrect you. Now we bind it, I protect you, connect you with the rest of the vampires. Nosferatu, never tired, only hungry. Sun is rising, got a virgin, appetizing. Take your first bite, you ready and willing to do what it takes for all my children. I wanna fight you, fight you. 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 I wanna fight you.
Hello. I'll set this again. Remind me to talk to you guys. Hi, everybody. That's a good number. So, are you guys ready? We're going to talk about human sacrifices today. So, I normally talk about myths and folklore and religions and stuff, but today I'm talking about the actions of real people based on the stuff they believe. So first, a few disclaimers. This is not to suggest that all the particular religion, country, or society took part or takes part in any of the activities mentioned in the program. All groups have their good and bad people, and none of these should be considered, the no fraction should represent the whole, is what I'm saying. Also, some of the actions are extremely disturbing. I mean, I'm disturbed. So yeah, discretion is advised. This is not for children, and a lot of adults might want to think twice. So, ready to skip on in with me? Roll up our sleeves. So human sacrifices have been going all over the world since prehistoric periods, especially if you include, like, the burial of servants with their master. Like, the pharaoh died, so hey, all you guys, you get to serve him in the afterlife, but to do that, we gotta kill you. And pull your brains out through your nose with a hook. And that sort of thing. Like you do. And so, like, even in, like, the Indus Valley, had, like, a climate change situation going on about 4,000 years ago. And there's an image of a man kneeling before what appears to be a deity. And there's a human head on a stool next to it. So, possibly, unless the person died of natural causes and they thought, what would be a good place? Let's put it on a stool. Probably they killed him and put him on a stool, as an offering. So there's that. And some people have been accused of human sacrificing people. The Greeks actually sort of told myths about sacrifice. But the Greeks were often kind of at war with different parts of each other. And they would just those people are horrible. They sacrifice people. They're bad. Those Cretans, that's where we get the word, by the way, Cretans, is because in Crete, that's, where the Minotaur was, and they were like, hey, that king, he slept with a cow and had a bull kid. Yeah, and his bull kid he couldn't kill it because he'd anger the gods, so he put the bull kid inside a big labyrinth and sacrifices all of our people to him when he captures us. They're horrible Cretans. That's where that came from. The more you know. Whoosh, ding. Anyway, so, however, in 2016, a 3,000-year-old skeleton was found in some places like where the Druids. We'll get to those in a minute. So, yeah, a 3,000-year-old skeleton of a male teenager was found at an altar dedicated to Zeus. So, maybe they, sacrificed the kid, the teenager, and they said, hey, Zeus, what you think? Give us boons and stuff. We don't know. I'm getting into, this is more, we're going to get into the dirt here pretty soon. But this is just some hearsay, whether they were, maybe they weren't sacrificing people. Some early Christians were falsely accused of cannibalism. But to be fair, when, eating flesh and drinking blood are part of your rituals, there might be some wires crossed in communicating. And plus there's, the Abraham, hey, Abraham, you should kill your kid. And he's like, I don't want to, but I guess I will. And they're like, oh, hey, maybe don't. I was just testing you. Great. So, so they don't sacrifice people. And from the Middle Ages, the Jews had been accused of sacrificing Christians, which also wasn't true. In fact, there was an actual term for this called blood libel, saying that it was such a lie. They sacrifice your kids, and yeah, that's what enemies often do. And in fact, Druids been accused of sacrificing people by the Romans and Greeks because they're like, hey, those people are our enemy. They sacrifice people. They're horrible. But they did find a 2,000-year-old mummy. And, it was an accidental mummy. Apparently, and I don't know if you know this, but if you throw a person's body in a bog, the acids in the bog will actually eat and prevent the decay from bacteria. But won't eat the skin of the body. So, 2,000 years later, you have this perfectly preserved murdered victim in a bog. Which makes me wonder if maybe the Romans didn't pop up a little north and then kill a dude, shove him in a bog, and then hop back down. Those murderers, I'm just speculating. I don't know, and neither do a lot. I mean, one guy doesn't really have evidence that it was massive in the area. So, and plus, we don't know why he was killed. It does seem to be an offering to something. Anyway, in fact, actually, human sacrifices. There's a study that was published in the journal Nature, and they found that human sacrifices kept people in a class system, because it's like, hey, we're the rulers, and hey, you're the working class, and hey, you're the poor people. I think we should all be equal. Hey, I think we found our first sacrifice. Yay! And so you get the honor of being offered up to the gods. And that was one way. I mean, so like back then they would sacrifice captives in the lower classes, and whereas now people, the poor people are sacrificed to pandemics, or maybe that's just my twisted, skewed version, interpretation of how things are now. But I don't know any billionaires dying of COVID. Do you? Anyway, moving right along. So scientists created 2 databases, even, of world cultures all over that have sacrificed people. And they have an idea, like a theory, like, hey, maybe it's to help keep classes in check. They can throw hypotheses at it to see if it sticks with all the numbers, crunching that they have of all the details of each of these civilizations. In fact, they can also look at the bones, right? They can study the bones and look at the different isotopes that are in their scalps and stuff and tell where they came from, what they ate, how long they lived there, maybe even in that area. That's pretty cool. A lot of science stuff there. Oh, so okay. So this is where we're going to get into the dirt and the nitty gritty. The Aztecs, as you know, which were conquered by a guy by the name of Hernan Cortez and his men. And hello, hi. And they talked about the human sacrifices of the Aztecs in Tenochtitlan. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. I'm pretty sure one day my mispronunciations of these words will summon an eldritch horror or something. But maybe we can get through today. Tenochtitlan in 1521. Hernan Cortez are like, these people are horrific. Look what they're doing. In fact, here's a picture of that stuff that they were talking about. Oh, by the way, I'm still here. Hi. And so these priests would use obsidian blades that are sharper than surgical steel to slice open the sacrifice and offer the still beating heart to the gods. See, look, you can see the whole finish him move from Mortal Kombat looking thing right there in the middle. And the bodies would then just sort of be tossed down those steps. Boom, 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 boom. And that's not all. Then they would pick them up, set them face up, and where, they could, they also had years of anatomical study, because they've been cutting people open for a while, and they knew just how to decapitate people really quickly with their obsidian knife. And then they would take their head off, and they would decapitate them. And many of the sacrifices, this is weird, many of them went willingly, because what an honor it is to give your heart and head up to the god Huitzilopochtli. I didn't summon anything, did I? Okay, fingers crossed. Alrighty, plus you're guaranteed a great afterlife. Somewhere, some people, were selling slaves specifically for sacrifices. Some were captive warriors, which even lived with them for a few years before they would sacrifice them. The great honor that it is. And, in fact, some sacrifices were because they fought ceremonial battles called flower wars. No killing, just capture. Until sacrificing, right? Yeah. So they'd cut the flesh off the skull, and they would then put the head on a post so that, it would be weathered, and then over time, I guess, the brains would rot and drip out and all that good stuff. And they would then put it on top of a zampontli. If you want to see the spelling of some of these words, check the links in the descriptions. I've put all my sources, all my sources in the links below. So the zampontli, which is interesting, looked apparently like this, with all these skulls on a big, huge rack in front of two towers, one to two different gods. So the huge rack in front of the temple gods, Huitzilopochtli, and which was the war god, and Tlaloc, the rain god, which were pretty important. I mean, without rain, you don't get your crops watered, and then you don't get to eat, and so that's important. And obviously, the rain god wanted skulls on a huge rack, so and being such was appeased. He allowed humanity's existence to continue. So some conquistadors wrote about the zampontli and its towers, estimating that the rack alone contained 130,000 skulls. Which, it seems excessive, but, so they say, when a new emperor was inaugurated, right, they sacrificed 80,400 people. I think they were expecting something like that at this year's presidential inauguration, but it was a bit more low-key. So essentially, the giant rack of 130,000 human skulls represented life and springtime renewal and regeneration. All these positive things from all that death. And so, because why not? Because remember, the gods of life and renewal were also the gods of death. They usually had a dual nature to them. So they would be, the god of sickness could also be the god of healing, or, the god of childbirth. You get the idea. Don't piss off the gods is the gist of the situation, because things can go sideways pretty quick with them if they're not happy. Yeah. So then the conquistadors, after they conquered them, apparently they buried this thing under Mexico City. And but see, again, these are the enemies. And without any solid archaeological evidence to say whether these people were horrible, and sacrificed. Well, I mean, I don't mean to judge and say horrible, but that's pretty horrific. And so a lot of archaeological evidence isn't, you need that to make sure that you know whether it's true or not. And, kind of like the evidence they did find right here when they dug it up in Mexico City. So this thing, that's real skulls there. This is real, and this is about how big it would have been. They've dug this thing up and found this giant rack of 130,000 skulls, 36 meters long. Oh, hello. And so that's a little over 118 feet long in front of this tower, because if you want a lot of skulls for your gods. So they would sacrifice people for important calendar dates, to dedicate temples, to reduce drought or famine. If someone looked at them sideways, well, no, they wouldn't have an event for being looked at sideways or wrongly, but they might take those people and put them in captive and then sacrifice those people on the important days, So other cultures around the world, they also built Zompantlis, but nothing like this thing here. Oh my gosh. Oops. Yeah. There we go. Right there. It's hard to get the angling just right. Yeah. There it is. There. And so other cultures around the world built Zompantlis. But yeah, they would have to learn from the Aztecs on this one. And also, so back to the ritual. Like, it wasn't over after having your head cut off, your heart cut out, rolled down a long flight of stairs, not in that order necessarily. And if this wasn't Inauguration Day, you might get made into a mask like this one. And look, that's probably the knife they cut his heart out and head off with, sticking out of his nose hole there. And so either way, like, the rest of you was likely gifted to a higher class member of society to be eaten. That's the rest of the ritual. Because, like, if your body is offered up to the gods, right, and then you, as a higher class member, somebody else, I guess, not you, because you're dead. But the other higher class members of society eat the thing that's offered up to the gods. It's like they're dining with the gods, and that possibly was what happened. There are illustrations that show from the 1500s showing body parts being cooked in large pots, and they found butcher marks on some of the bones in the area. So that kind of looks like it was probably true as well. Some say that they only did this during the times of famine. And of course, some say it was just to sort of commune with the gods. Hey, look, the gods are eating the body, and we're eating the body. We're like dining. We're so decadent. We're dining out together with the gods. It was quite a lovely time, yes. So a lot of the gods in a lot of different cultures, like I said, were that dual nature. So that fertility and death. So a lot of times when those things happen, like famine or droughts, they would do sacrifices to help get things rolling again, So a little further along, this is a different god. This is a different day, a same culture, very similar to the other two gods. See, Zait-Totec is another god. So we have your war gods and your rain gods. Now we have a god who represents the renewal and regeneration, the growth, which happens because of the rains. And also Zait-Totec invented war. So he's kind of like the best of both worlds of those. And in Nahuatl means our Lord the Flayed One. Guess where this is going? So cue the month-long festival of Tlacazitwi-Litztili. Woo! It doesn't roll quite off the tongue like Burning Man, maybe. Or Woodstock, but it was a big festival. This one lasted for 20 days. So like the spring break in Cancun, it was a party place where you danced and you got a ritual haircut, and let's see. Oh, went too far. And then then after the ritual haircut, and you got lead to the top of the pyramid where you had your heart cut out. I mean, woo! Tlacazitwi-Litztili, as you would say at the big festival, probably. So on the second day, if you weren't the one that was killed on the first day, then if that wasn't you dying, you'd be a captive of war, prisoner, sent into combat fighting, right? But you'd combat fight multiple better armed opponents while partially restrained. So it's essentially death is kind of imminent. But there are people who win, if you're really, really good, like Gladiator, right? If you're really good, you can tip the odds and win. And And if you did win, you were highly honored, and then still had your heart cut out. You were just honored while, like, hey, great, let's go eat and party, and then we're still going to cut your heart out. And skinned. And probably also eaten. Yeah. Woo! Talaka sai wheelies tilly! So then, see, the young men would wear the skin, right? And parade through town, engaging in mock battles and soliciting. By the way, here's Zytotec. There he is, the Flayed God. You can see like a scalp covering over his face there, and you can kind of see like through the lips of somebody else's lips, you see his lips underneath there. Because, skin. And so, like, how did the soliciting really work? Like, hey, babe, like my coat? Or, wanna make more people to probably sacrifice later? I mean, so, fertility, yeah, it was everything. So there was a lot of sex. And, probably, so they could replenish the numbers, because, you just sacrificed 130, several people, a lot of people getting sacrificed. And she's like, heck yeah! Woo! Tlakazai wheelies tilly! And so, which I would imagine in this scenario, it probably didn't work out that way towards the end of the 20 days of wearing skin. And, that's where the vomiting was probably not from the overconsumption of alcohol. I would guess. So, and all this, partying, sacrificing, eating people, and skin wearing symbolize renewal. Because look at me. I'm a corn in a husk. Remember life and death, two sides of the same coin? That kind of thing. So, okay, so now remember when I said that this was going to get horrific? Yeah. Okay, it's going to get a little worse, so content-wise. So, yeah, children are involved. So, trigger warning, yeah. So, they would also sacrifice children as well, and they would do this very slowly so that they could shed more tears, being symbolic of rain. Because they believed that symbolism would bring more rain and renewal and food. But, not all child sacrifices in all cultures were completely inhumane. I mean, that's I'm using that term really loosely, and because they're still sacrificing kids. So some mummies found preserved and frozen in Argentina at the foot of the volcano Lulea, I'm guessing I pronounced correctly, had archaeological evidence in their scalps of escalated levels of coca leaves and corn beer in the year before. So there's, like coca leaves, that's like the stuff they used to make cocaine and, lots of pain relievers. So, their sacrifice, and again, warning, this is a 500-year-old mummy of a 13-year-old girl. So I'm going to show you, this is a picture to show. So yeah, I mean, trigger warning. But this is a real mummy they found that was 3,000 years old. No, 500, sorry, I was way off. 500-year-old mummy. And she had coca leaves, as you can see, in her mouth. And perfectly preserved when she was frozen. At the foot of this volcano. Well, not this volcano. I don't have the picture of the volcano. But anyway, so she was dubbed Leleako, because she had coca leaves, that stuff that makes cocaine, in her mouth. And she lived a high life for a while, and had anesthetics, which would numb the neck and face and stomach. And so, So then a 4,000-year-old mummy, a cemetery in China, has hundreds of tombs holding human sacrifices to continue servitude to the emperors in the afterlife. Like the pharaohs, right? Hey, the pharaoh died, so all you servants, come here. We got something honorable for you. Yeah. And so this probably ended around 221 BCE by Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. He subverted the human sacrifice thing by having thousands of life-sized terracotta warriors, like from the third Mummy movie. We'll try. I know a lot of people try to forget that movie existed, but the terracotta warriors were cool, and they were buried with them. The statues were buried with them instead of people. So the Mayans would paint you blue in honor of the rain god Chalk before throwing you into a well. Some believe that on the occasions the end of a ball game would commence a ritual of sacrificing the losing team. So high stakes. Yeah. Based on the Mayan art anyway. But not all archaeologists agree with the interpretation of the art there, but maybe? So, also the Hebrew Bible mentions human sacrifices by the Israelites, who not only worship Yahweh, but also Canaanite gods. But there isn't any evidence to support this, and again, a lot of that were reports from people who opposed Israel. So yeah, the enemy again is like, they're horrible people. Look, that's awful. And I hope I pronounced this one right. In Hitobashira, Japan, the floors and walls of castles house human sacrifices. Legends talk of a peasant woman called Oshizu who agreed to be sacrificed so that her son could be a samurai. So that's kind of warms your heart, doesn't it? There. Also, they think maybe kamikaze pilots might be considered self-sacrifices from World War II. So yeah, and yeah, while we're talking about today-ish stuff, I mean, it's not like any of that kind of stuff, happened like in a country as young as, say, the United States, right? Except for where it did happen. In April 3rd, 1912, Clementine Barbarette, who was a high priestess of the Church of Sacrifice. Yeah. I mean, that's a bit head on the nail there. Maybe naming people wasn't her thing, or being civil to her neighbors. Because she sacrificed them. So she is high priestess, led her religion to murder 40 people, 17 which she personally took part in, axing them. So, yeah. And that was to get riches and immortality. That's apparently what that gives you. Going around and cutting up your friends with an axe, or your neighbors. Also, it may be some revenge involved because they didn't follow her. Because she said they refused to obey messages from God, and she cut them up with an axe. So I mean, how does that door-to-door work? I mean, like, hey, have you heard the good news? If not, I got something to axe you. Anyway, so but if it was an enlightened cult, it was. I mean. There was no sexism. Both the men and women participated in the murder sprees. Yeah. So during World War II, in 1946 in Italy, Leonardo Chianchuli. I didn't summon anything, did I? I'm sure I pronounced that incorrectly. But she poisoned her sacrifices so that her son would come back from the war unharmed. But waste not, want not. She also made their flesh into soap and tea cakes from their blood. So she was called the soap maker of Correggio. As well as serial killer, because when your human sacrifices aren't sanctioned by the state, you get different labels. But it's not like that stuff has gone on, in the 21st century. Well, except for where it has. In March 29th, 2012, the Miraz Matriarch and La Santa Muerte sacrificed 3 people to the goddess of death, Santa Muerte. Why, you ask? Because apparently when death is appeased, she gives you riches. So they did it for money. Yeah. Also, satanic and vampiric rituals from some serial killers. 1997, a 16-year-old Luke Woodham of Pearl, Mississippi, went to school with a rifle, killing 2 classmates, wounding 7, and he said he was told to do this by a satanic group as a way of achieving their purpose. Whatever that is. And again, this is not actually representative of the whole. There are actual Satanists, and they don't do horrible things. They're actually very peaceful. They don't really worship the Satan from the Christian faith. They worship the idea of enlightenment, a masculine symbol of enlightenment. In fact, actually, in some cases, it's not masculine or feminine, but both. It's sort of gender equality kind of thing. And one of the tenets of LaVeyan Satanism is do not harm children. So, methinks that these kids probably just heard about Satanism and thought, yeah, it's like this. And then they got together and said, hey, let's go kill people. Because kids, well, I say kids. Kids, with mental issues. So other notables were the vampire of Sacramento, Richard Trenton Chase, who killed and drank blood, like you do, because it's a vampire cult. Because he said his blood was turning into sand, and logically you need to drink blood, I guess, to get the sand unsanded in your blood. Right? That just makes sense. That's just science. The Night Stalker, also, Richard Ramirez, who is famous for his pentagrammed hand shouting, "Hail Satan!" So many of these were done by teenagers, who acted alone or in very small groups, usually with mental illnesses. These rituals are not sanctioned or practiced by these religions in any teachings. In fact, like I said, LaVeyan Satanism, their big tenet there, one of them is do not harm children. So many of these would be not much different than, like, to appease, killing people to appease Slender Man, like, a creepypasta, like actually happened with these kids. These, these preteens and teens decided, we need to kill our best friend because Slender Man told us to, and if we don't, he's going to get us and our family anyway, and if we do it, we'll get to become proxies and live in Slender's mansion. Being obsessed with creepypasta as a teenager or even preteen, not a red flag. Liking horror and drawing things, not a red flag. Maybe even a slight imaginary friend, not terribly a red flag. But there were some red flags. Some of their stuff would be like, their writings talked about having to kill and things. That's dark. If they actively start saying, I have to kill because of this, not like, ooh, I'm writing a story about this character that has to do this. That's different. They were like, hey, I have to go do these things. And they were writing that in their journals. So, yeah. Also, if you'd like to see some more information about, the Vampire of Sacramento, the Lair of the Red Hair, I know, Sister Scarlet did a thing on there, so you could check out some of their stuff. Also, the Morbid podcast, which I really like too, also did one on the Slender killings, and if you want to see more information. Also, I put some links down there in there, and there's an actual interview of the survivor. By the way, they didn't kill her. She's still alive, and she tells a little bit of her story on ABC News in a link down below. But as for, the satanic panic, the Department of Justice, FBI, National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime in 1992 had this to say about the big satanic panic and whether there are, child abuse, ritualistic things that are doing, horrible things to children. Such abuse, however, is not perpetrated only or primarily by Satanists. The statistical odds are that such abusers are members of mainstream religions. If 99.9% of Satanists and 0.1% of Christians abuse children, and this is an if, as part of their spiritual belief system, that still means that the vast majority of children so abused are abused by Christians in that scenario, because that's how small the number is of Satanists that are out there. Also, it's an even smaller fraction of people calling themselves Satanists that are even doing horrible things like child abuse. So until hard evidence is obtained and corroborated, the public should not be frightened into believing that their babies are being bred and eaten, that 50,000 missing children are being murdered in human sacrifices, or that Satanists are taking over America's daycare centers or institutions, end quote. So, yeah, satanic panic, a lot of baloney. The ritual sacrifice of people with albinism is a thing. And that condition, leaves a pigment in their skin and hair, so that they are like this color almost. So they're very, very pale, not quite this color. And and this is a big kind of an ongoing problem in the East African nation of Tanzania. Some individuals in the country believe that the rituals that involve the sacrifice of albinos or the use of their body parts bring good fortune. So they're prized for their parts. The Guardian reported in 2015 that Tanzania officials had arrested 32 witch doctors who were allegedly involved in the rituals or trade in body parts. Apparently that's pretty underground thing. I wonder if they're on the dark web. I don't know. Not really. You let me know in the comments if you guys know. And even humanists have appealed to the Human Rights Council and the United Nations to do, something about the human sacrifice. They're still going on today. In places. And this is disturbing. I'm going to go ahead and read this letter from the link's down below too. You can actually go to the humanist link and then go to their page and donate to their cause of having something done about these sacrifices. So here's the link. 40th session of UN Human Rights Council, 25th February, 22nd March of 2019. So this was last year. And this was debate on item 4, Elizabeth O'Casey. A few days ago, archaeologists working in Peru found evidence of the ritual sacrifice of around 140 children, which occurred in 1450. Scientists suggest the Kimu civilization sacrificed the children in response to the catastrophic weather. To most, the fighting represents abhorrent acts from a time when people had little understanding of science, relying instead on superstition. Yet, child sacrifice continues today. In Uganda, children disappear frequently, murdered or mutilated by witch doctors as part of a ceremonial ritual supposed to bring luck to those who pay. In Nigeria, some evangelical preachers encourage people to believe children are witches. Abuse, abandonment, and murder can follow. In South Africa, some traditional healers use body parts of sacrificed children as ingredients in medicines. Child sacrifice rituals can involve the cutting or removal of body parts, faces, or genitals. These brutal acts are frequently done whilst the child is still alive, since there is a belief that the screams of the victim being attacked enhance the power of the body parts as does the innocence of the victim. So again, that link to donate, it's down in the description. I'm just going to not read the rest of that. I'll let you go on and read the rest of that. I'm just going to move on to other things. Sati. In ancient Hindu, Sati is an ancient Hindu ritual where a woman chooses or is coerced to leap onto a funeral pyre of her husband after he has died. Today, the practice is outlawed. But on very rare occasions, it still occurs. In 2006, BBC News reported that a woman reportedly in her 40s leapt onto the funeral pyre of her husband, which is, it's kind of romantic in a way, and a nice thought, and a nice thought that I think I'll leave you on today. So thanks for joining me, and if you'd like to see some more, I've done a lot of things on folklore, usually on just folklore and myths and beliefs. This time I was doing more actions based on those things. So if you want to hear more about, horror, the darker side of mythology, let me know in the comments what you would like to see next, because I have a lot of topics I cover from, boogeymen to, protection from the dark arts, things that could protect you spiritually. So just let me know in the comments what you'd like to see, and thanks for joining. You guys are awesome. Gonna leave you guys, and let me know in the comments. Do some likes and describes and subscribesy things, and I'll love you guys forever. And good night, guys.